Good morning and welcome everyone. The question is, can man see God? And the answer, I think, is, well, not with our physical eyes. No, we're not made that way. But we can experience God. God is, as Patanjali tells us in the Yoga Sutras, God can be perceived in 8 different forms or different ways. There's light, sound, love, joy, wisdom, power, and I always forget 2 more. They're in there somewhere. But anyway, there's 8. We can ourselves experience any of those, just in our normal human bodies, but in a different way, not so much using the human body. I had an interesting experience when I was a child. I think I was 8 years old. I was sick with something, the flu or whatever, one of those kind of things that little kids get all the time. And I had been sick for several days and sleeping and not sleeping and feeling bad headache and coughing and all of those kinds of things. And then this went on for a few days. And then I was sleeping and I woke up and all of a sudden everything was different. No longer was I coughing, for one. No longer did I have a headache. But better than that, there was something different about me. I felt really, really calm, and the word that kept coming to my mind was, I feel contented. I felt really good, mentally, emotionally, and that kind of thing. Not so much with my body. It still was kind of not well, but something inside me had this wonderful contentment or something like that. And I enjoyed that until it kind of passed on, and I fell asleep again, and the next day I got up and things were just sort of normal, as usual. And so years went by, many years went by, and finally one day I learned to meditate. And when I did so, I learned how, and then I practiced for some time, a few weeks or something like that, and then I had that same experience. And that's when I learned that was the experience of knowing God or experiencing God as peace. So we in our, just whoever we are, wherever we are in the spiritual path, we can experience God in many different ways. Peace is one of them. And in fact, it's even said that that's usually the easiest or the first step for many people as they experience peace. And we can even tell someone who might come here for a class, let's say, who might say something like, I really like to learn to meditate, but I'm not really interested in the spiritual aspect of what you do. Could I just learn stress management? And we could say to them, you can, that's fine. We don't have to tell them they're going to experience God as peace. We can just tell them we're going to experience peace. And we don't have to say to them that we're going to show you how to see the spiritual eye. We can say to them, we're going to show you how you can draw energy from the lower part of the brain where all the ups and downs happen, emotions and limbic system and all of those kinds of things. We can help you to learn to draw energy to the front part of the frontal lobe of the brain, which is much better in terms of problem solving and all the kind of things that you read about in textbooks. And people like this will be able to understand that, and they will also be able to experience God. They may not have a word for it. They may not want to talk about it that way, but that's okay. It's all right. They can experience it just as someone who's very religious can experience God. Quite a few years ago, I used to teach these beginning meditation classes at UC Davis Experimental College. Well, being as it's a government school, we weren't allowed to talk about God. But that's okay. And I spent a fair amount of time figuring out how to present what we do, which is really a religion for us, but for them it doesn't have to be. It can be anything that is understandable to them, to someone else. And so that's what I did. I did that for several years. It was quite interesting, learning different ways to present it to somebody who was perhaps rather skeptical of, the way it's usually presented. And so this is one of the ways that we can experience God. We can also experience God as energy. Yogananda said that if he only had one technique that he could give to people, it would be he would choose the energization exercises, because from them, a person, even if that's all they knew, would eventually, if they practiced this regularly, learn the principles of yoga, all of them, I guess. And this is all that they would need. Well, I have to confess that I never took the energization exercises quite as seriously as I learned much later after practicing them for years. I learned it much later. I did them, I did the tensing and relaxing and focusing on the different parts of the body and feeling the energy and all of those kinds of things. And then, about 5 years ago or so, I suffered a kind of a incapacity, a sort of a disability, semi-disability, and I couldn't move very well. I would get up in the morning and I would kind of stumble out of bed and be really stiff, very stiff. And then I would do the energization exercises. And when I was done, then I could move almost normally without, spending too much time. All I did was spend those 10 minutes on tensing and relaxing and moving the energy and doing what we're taught. But that's what worked for me. And I saw that this is yet another way that we can experience God, is through energy or power. That's one of the words that's used, is power, but it's sometimes easier, for me at least, to think of it as energy. This is what makes us work, and this is what is within us. And so if we are able to focus on that power, then we can actually experience it, and sometimes, in fact, we have some very dramatic experiences. So this, again, another way to access or to become acquainted, to become familiar with God, is through the practice of something that we do with energy. And a third one, we can experience God through love. Now, we all know about human love, our friends, our family, our pets, perhaps, things we love to do. All of these things are ways that we can experience God as love. Most of it is what we can call human love. We do our best. We don't really know how to experience or manifest divine love. We know, however, probably most people understand that human love has its limits, but we keep trying. Nobody, I don't think, really ever gives up. We keep trying. We have our friends. Sometimes friendships don't go so well. We have a lot of difficulties maybe with friends. We go away, hurt feelings, or we're angry, or whatever it is. But we keep trying. We keep coming back. We keep doing this or doing that to find love. Not just human love with all the emotional ups and downs and disappointments and misunderstandings. Yeah, but we know there's something more. We're always thinking something more. And even somebody who thinks they're contented in life probably still knows somewhere there's more. than just the human condition, the human life. We know this. And so we keep searching, we keep searching. We know that it's somewhere. We learn, perhaps, to not only experience, but try to share love in some fashion. We learn that through kindness, we may very well help someone who is in a terrible mood, for example. A few kind words might change that person, at least for a day, might be able to open their heart a little bit. Even if it's just for a few minutes or a day. We've known someone for a long time who has a real problem with a negative attitude. Very, very difficult for him to ever say anything positive. But if someone goes and sits with him for a while and talks just in a normal way without letting him know that he's not being very pleasant, but just goes and sits with him for a while, very often this continual negativity will begin to die down. And at least, it's not a very high goal, but at least if he stops complaining, we feel that we've made progress. Maybe 5 minutes later, he'll go back to complaining. But I always feel that it's one more step, one more push in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. And so we do things like this in our life. We find ways to try to draw out love from other people, in other people, not necessarily for ourselves. When we're able to not worry about, how am I, what is he giving to me? What about me? When we get away from that kind of attitude and we focus more on what can I do for them, what can I do for you, how can I make your life a little easier, how can I bring a little bit of sunshine into your life. When we do those kinds of things, we realize that, oh, we got a big benefit too. You may have, I'm sure all of us have had this experience where we try to do something helpful to someone else and we go away feeling a whole lot better ourselves, even though maybe we didn't have that in mind when we started. It happens all the time. And so we learn slowly through our human relationships, as I say, through our friends, our families, try to do the very best we can by them and do everything we can to help them as much as ourselves to move on the spiritual path. And so all of these ways are ways that we are able to experience God, just as human beings, even long before we're ever to a point where we're great saints and avatars, long before that. Today, we can experience God as peace, as love, as joy, as power, all kinds of things like this. And this is how we grow, by experiencing these things again and again, and then sharing them. We eventually will come to that state of oneness. Sure.
We'll now